the American scientists are so eager to, in a way, leak the report to New York Times and make the world know what exactly are the scientific evidence they try to figure out?
Well, thank you for that question. I want to set this in context because while I'm no particular fan of this administration, it's really important to understand that this assessment that is being discussed today is the product of a multi-year effort. When some time ago in 1990, Congress passed a law and required these assessments to be done. The first, this was initiated in a Republican administration, the George H.W. Bush administration. It's a 4-year process. It involves probably hundreds of scientists, 13 agencies and departments of the government. There's a public process in which the public is made aware of this and allowed to comment.
Right. Mr. Zindler, as a result, may I ask you, Mr. Zindler, do you think the Trump administration would deny this report or go exactly the other way compared to this report rhetorically? Can they afford?
It's a very interesting question. I think we're going to have to see. I mean, the report is very damning in its findings and is very, very clear in saying that human activity is what is responsible for the change in temperature that we've seen. That's not consistent with some of the things that we've heard from this administration, and so it really does put the administration in an interesting position in terms of releasing the report, which effectively is supposed to represent its position as the federal government on the issues around climate change.
All climate indicators, according to that specific report we just talked about, show warming. Vital signs like air and sea level temperatures, sea level and water vapor are all on the rise, while freshwater cover like glaciers and sea ice are all melting, according to the U.S. National Climate Assessment Report, the one that we just talked about. Ms. Wu, you've been in this circle for a long time. We know the world was appalled by the U.S. decision this time. But will these scientists be able to convince the politics?
I think it's an interesting process. And with the current Trump presidency, it's already creating a lot of confusions and distractions, to a certain extent, even sort of discouragement. But in the meantime, actually, the science is telling the truth. And particularly the report looked back 50 years. So half a century's record of scientific information knowledge once again demonstrating climate change is happening, and the U.S. is no exception. And if you look at different regions, different parts of the country's been suffering hugely and from the climate change. So no one can deny the fact. But hopefully somehow it will be very difficult to change the Trump presidency position. But I believe the country, subnational regions, the civil society, the public and the business community will stay on the course.
Well, when we talk about staying on the course, to what extent can they stay on the course when the national policy is going the other way around? And Ms. Bell, you know better than I do, in fact, that the EPA, of course, was very skeptical about this report because that's an administrator chosen by the Trump administration. Having said that, though, this is creating such a divide among, let's just say, when we see from outside, the Western countries, so-called. I mean, Europe and US now have very different ideological pursuit now. One is really about doing something for climate change, and the other is, at least the Trump administration, not at all. How will this transform American politics and also America's alliance relationship, as well as the next step for American businesses when it comes to priorities of development, technology-wise and market-wise as well?
Listen, I think it's really important to understand that this report is the process not just of the Environmental Protection Agency, excuse me, but 13 federal agencies.
Yes, you said that earlier already.
This, and including I know, but that's important to understand. There's a lot going on in the United States. I'm not happy about what's going on at the federal level, but I also understand that there are parts of the Defense Department, for example, that understand that climate change is real and impacting their activities, just to give one example. So I don't think the debate is entirely over. I do understand that the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency has challenged the science, but there are others in the administration who aren't challenging the science. Yes, we're in a difficult position internationally. I personally wish we had not made this effort to withdraw from Paris, but I also know that there are states and localities and cities across this country that are committed to managing this issue, as Ms.
being
Wu
reported
pointed
very
out, and
widely.
that's a very important part of it.
That's being reported very widely. But you know, the crucial question you mentioned, Ms. Bell, is the debate is still going on. And then, where is the debate, Mr. Zindler? And then I come back to you, Ms. Bell, as well. Where is the debate right now? Is the debate taking place within the bureaucratic structure? Is the debate going on between parties? Is the debate between the business community and the politicians? And how much will this debate really be able to change or alter the current central government, or the federal government, as you put it, in the United States position?
So it's a lot of questions, but in short, in most parts of the world, there actually isn't a whole lot of debate about whether climate change is real and whether it's affecting the planet, and even about whether or not human beings are the cause of it.
In the United States, that's the
largely
one I'm
settled in
talking
most
about.
other parts of the world.
Yeah.
In the United States, that seems to continue to be an ongoing debate, I would argue, within this administration. But I think it's important to put a little bit of context around this report. This report, as was pointed out by the other guest, has been in progress of being produced for years now. It represents the collective work of government scientists and researchers and others who are entirely apolitical.
But you know, Mr. Zindler,
essentially bubbles up.
You are in
Eventually
Washington,
needs
so
to be
you
signed
must
off
have
by the
noticed.
Trump
I have to
administration.
interrupt here because you're repeating the same message 3 times. Because we know within the Congress, among the Republicans, there are a lot of oppositions toward this report and a lot of opposition toward what you consider as the fact of the climate change. So when you are saying there's overwhelming, it's not true, at least within the Republican Party, and that is the party now, which is the majority party in the United States. So when you talk about this debate, how strong is this debate? Is this debate just among you who are already supporters of doing something for climate change, or among those who are really making the decisions? That is the question, and that is the question we need to ask to the United States. Mr. Zindler, what is your judgment right now?
Maybe I could.
Mr. Zindler first, and then I'll have Ms. Bell.
I don't.
Mr. Zindler first, very briefly.
So you're absolutely right that the Congress is certainly not in any kind of consensus over the climate issue whatsoever. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that as you look at what this report means in terms of actual policies, it's important to understand that if the federal government is saying in this report that climate change is real and it's a problem, then that makes it difficult for the Trump administration to write rules that do not effectively address climate change.
There we go.
And that's why the context here around that is important. I realize that the other guests and I have made that point, but you need to understand that this scientific research is the basis on which law is supposed to be made.
That's right.
And so if laws are made that are in direct conflict with it, then you will potentially have problems with laws and rules being challenged by various environmental groups in the future.
Wonderful, Mr. Zindler. You take
And
that
if I could
position
also
and
add
idea
to that,
out already. Ms. Bell, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that the Congress is a little bit more divided than is publicly thought. There's a growing group called the Bipartisan Climate Caucus in the Congress. It's currently at, I think, 50 members. You can only join it if you come in as a Republican with a Democrat or a Democrat with a Republican. And there's some interesting and unexpected names on that list. So what I think we're really seeing is a growing grappling with this issue.
Okay.
It takes time, and I know it's politicized, but I think if you look at some of these undercurrents, there are a number of things going on. The second point is this document that we're talking about is in effect a kind of a guidance document. It's a guidance document not just for the federal government, but also for the other parts of the United States, the states and the cities and the counties and things, all of whom have to, as responsible government bodies, have to plan for changes that are going on in their communities. And this helps provide guidance and ideas to them to look forward and understand how they can address the needs of their constituents going forward relative to to these changes we're seeing.
Ms. Wu, if we look from outside to the United States, of course we look at the political cycles. One is the midterm election next year. The other, of course, is the presidential election. The Trump administration have 3 years. In fact, there's a window opportunity for them to still change it because of how things are being arranged with the Paris Accord. So do you think there could be opportunities? Will they grasp it? Do you think the international community could be of any support toward a change of attitude? Will the administration change and then attitudes change? Ms. Wu.
It's an interesting question in a way. I think politically, it's going to be very, very difficult to change the picture in the U.S. The U.S., the Senate situation, the divided Senate or Congress has been the biggest excuse in the last 2 decades, starting with Kyoto and now Paris Agreement. So that has become the biggest excuse from the U.S. for the international community. Hey, we cannot change that. What do you do with it, right? So the hope is very limited at this moment until the political divide situation at the federal Congress could be changed, which is going to take much, much longer time. But on the other hand, the exciting part is the actions at the local level, at the bottom-up level. So how the two will work together to continue to play the role for the U.S. to contribute to the climate solution at the global level, that remains to be seen. It's a very difficult situation. As I said, on one side, politically, it's a very difficult situation. We just have to wait until the president change in the U.S. or wait for the divide of the situation at the federal Congress could change.
If I could, Ms. Wood, a follow-up question. China, of course, is being seen as one of the leaders now to do something about climate change in the world. But on the other hand, will those individuals, businesses, and also states in the United States who are subscribing to the idea of climate change and doing something about it be able to work with China? To what extent will they find a way through China toward a goal that is commonly recognized with China and, let's just say, the rest of the world?
This happens to be a bright spot. If you look at the city-states at the subnational level, the two countries have already been working very, very closely together. If you look at the business community, many U.S. companies in China have been already committing, continue to commit to the Paris Agreement, committing to technology innovation, R&D, finding the solutions. But in the meantime, of course, they also recognize this is the biggest opportunity for the future, the near future. They have to be part of it. Either you continue to be part of the block or you continue to be part of the solution. I think the smart people, decision makers at the subnational level and business level in the U.S. in particular have seen it. They have to work with China on this.
Well, 2 arguments. One is soft power, of course. When the rest of the world see one thing and only one country sees the other, certainly there's an argument about soft power. Secondly, is the business opportunities. How much will be missed as a result of not recognizing the same goal with the rest of the international community? Ms. Bell, do you think the Trump administration, when talking about America first, when talking about business opportunities, will be able to recognize these 2 fronts that are also very important for the United States? Of course, it's your internal affairs. That's why I'm only asking for your views.
I think increasingly you're seeing independent action by people, by business, even by our Congress, which is taking action independent of the Trump administration's point of view on certain critical issues. So it's hard to know how this is going to move forward. But I'm a little bit more optimistic that there is enough momentum both in the clean energy world and in the desire to tackle this issue among business, among a lot of legislators, if not all legislators, among a lot of states.
Right.
And there are a lot of practical issues to address. So I'm a little bit more optimistic that that some not good attitudes in the Trump administration won't block actions elsewhere.
Mr. Zindler, also 30 seconds for you to wrap it up.
So yeah, I think it's fair to say it's very important to know that in the United States, states have a lot of leeway to make their own energy policies, and we're seeing that. I was in Beijing a few months ago for the Clean Energy Ministerial, a meeting of energy ministers around the world, and none other than the governor of California, Jerry Brown, was there and met with your president during his visit. So clearly we see the commitment from some parts of the country. certainly less in other parts of the country, but the U.S. is a large and diverse country, and a lot of leeway for local policy making, which will help address these issues.